Hello, my name is Dr. T. Wu, Assistant Professor of Management at Montclair State University. I am a professor in project management, and today we'll examine a specific case. This is the case of Boeing 737 MAX 8. As you know, it's been in the news recently, and it's not for good reasons. Just to refresh you what's happening with the Boeing 737 MAX 8. The first incident happened last year where Lion Air, that is from Indonesia, flight 610, dropped suddenly into Java Sea and killing all 189 people on board. Earlier this year, a second incident happened on the same model of the plane, Ethiopian Air, Air 302, in which 157 people were actually flying at a speed almost 600 miles per hour toward the ground. And when the collision happened, the crash happened, it created a crater that's about 32 feet deep, killing, again, all 157 people on board. Since that time, all major air administration, including the United States FAA, have essentially put a stop on the plane and is currently no longer in commercial flight. Of course, Boeing is working to recertify the plane and bring it back into the air. What I'm about to tell is from a project management perspective. This is, of course, tragedy all around with 346 soul loss. But from a project management perspective, what led to these moments, these two crashes, and what is currently going on underway? So from a project management perspective, Boeing was first conceived, Boeing 737 MAX 8, was first conceived in about 2011. This is when their competitor, Airbus, came out with a new plane that is more fuel efficient, Airbus A320, they call it the Neo. And it's about 15% more fuel efficient. In this very competitive airline industry, 15% improvement is significant. You could go, for example, on the same tank of gas, 15% longer distance, which of course you could imagine could get you to far more cities. So in response to this threat, competitive threat from Airbus, Boeing started developing the 737 MAX 8. The problem with the Boeing plane and the design compared to A320 is that Boeing has classically been lower to the ground than the Airbus. So Airbus achieving this 15% fuel efficiency by putting a larger engine, and that takes, of course, bigger and more space. Well, Boeing couldn't exactly do that because their plane was already low to the ground, and they did it by design, by the way. In the 50s and the 60s, it was easier to load the plane, to fix the plane, to get the luggage off, for example. So it was done for a particular purpose 50 years ago, but right now that's a little bit integrated. So they couldn't do what Airbus did and just putting on a bigger engine. What they had to do is actually elevate the engine slightly above the wing. So if you look at the two models of the plane side by side, you'll see that Boeing's noticeably, this big engine, is actually higher. That led to a series of design changes and flaws, essentially, that the Boeing had to patch up. And from a project management perspective, these are the three main lessons. The first lesson is really that the project environment matters. When Boeing developed this plane, it wasn't from scratch pad, it wasn't from infinite budget. Of course, no project truly is. But in this case, they're responding to a competitive threat. And as recently as just earlier this week, another report came out in Business Wall Street Journal. There's a whistleblower in Boeing outlining one of the engineers saying how Boeing's trying to cut costs. So in this case, the business environment in which the project was conceived ultimately impacted the project, in this case, very negatively. Because what Boeing tried to do is come up with their MAX 8 at a cheaper price, and also they started trying to cut corners around training. So if they keep the plane the same as before, they didn't have to go through rigorous training. And for, of course, thousands of pilots, and for their customers flying the plane, that translates to a lot of money saved. So, environment. The second is what I call the perfect storm. Whenever you develop a new product, there's a lot of risk. And in this case, perfect storm is a confluence of multiple factors that happen to manifest at around the same point. In the Boeing's case, this perfect storm created when they started trying to save money, when they started taking corner around the training. They further later, we learned in their MCAS system that relied only on single sensor, the angle of attack sensor. Most planes that use the MCAS system was first developed for military rely on two sensors, but in this case only 1. So if that sensor is faulty, then the system will respond. Due to these confluence of factors, and many of them which we're still learning today, the plane was actually quite dangerous. And then the third, what I call the duty of care. Project managers, there's a code of ethics. And one of the code of ethics, if nothing else, is do right by the people who are using the product. In Flint, Michigan, we see that problem with engineers approving design that caused lead into the water pipe. Well, in the case, we have at least 2 groups of engineers or project professionals that were sleeping at the wheel. One is, of course, from Boeing, and the second is actually from FAA. The watchdog that's supposed to look after the industry will also, let's say, sleeping at the wheel. So the tragedy that ensued is something that we all know about. And we're still discovering what that means to Boeing, to the society in general, to aviation industry, as we approach every single day with new evidence. But clearly from a project management perspective, it is important to remember that environmental matters a lot to the project. Avoid perfect storm whenever possible. Isolate and treat each individual risk the best we can. And 3, remember who's using the product and services that we build, because it can save life or cost life. Thank you.